She woke up early, before the sun had even started to rise. The soft light creeping through her window barely touched her face, but she was already wide awake. Today felt heavy, like a weight pressing down on her chest. She knew what school would bring. Every day was a challenge, but she had learned to carry it quietly, like a secret she didn't share with anyone. She sat on the edge of her bed, rubbing her eyes, feeling the tension coil inside her like a spring that might snap at any moment. Breakfast was quick, almost mechanical. She barely tasted the cereal, her mind already at the school doors she had to pass through. Her mother noticed her quiet mood but didn't push. She knew her daughter often faced things that weren't easy to talk about. Instead, she offered a gentle smile and a pat on her shoulder. That small gesture gave her a moment of strength she would need for the day ahead. The walk to school was long, but she tried to enjoy the calm before the storm. The streets were still mostly empty, the city waking up slowly, but her thoughts were already crowded with memories of past encounters. She remembered the whispers, the laughter behind her back, the shoves in crowded hallways. Each memory made her heart beat a little faster. But she also remembered her own strength, the way she had survived before and learned to stand back up. That thought, small as it was, gave her a flicker of courage. When she arrived at school, the familiar sights and sounds hit her like a wave. Lockers slammed, students shouted to friends across the hallway, and the smell of the cafeteria mixed with the faint scent of cleaning supplies. But the noise couldn't drown out the tension in the air that seemed to follow her everywhere. She noticed them immediately, the group of bullies who had made her life difficult for months. They were laughing, pushing each other, clearly waiting for their next opportunity. Her stomach sank, but she squared her shoulders and walked past them, pretending not to notice, though every instinct in her body screamed to run. She found her first class, slipped inside quietly, and took a seat near the back where she thought she could disappear into the crowd. The teacher started the lesson, and she tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting to the earlier incidents. The bullies had noticed her, of course. They always did. She could feel their eyes tracking her from the hallway through the classroom windows. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter, but she knew it did. Every glance was a reminder of the danger, of the humiliation that could come at any moment. During break, she stayed in the corner of the cafeteria, nibbling on a sandwich, keeping her head down. She watched the other students laugh and talk, feeling like an outsider in a world where she was supposed to belong but never fully did. The bullies came in, loud and arrogant, making a show of their presence. They called out names, exaggerated jokes, and laughed in a way that made her stomach twist. She kept her eyes on her food, pretending not to hear, but inside she was furious. Not just with them, but with herself for feeling powerless. Despite the fear, she noticed small things that gave her hope. A friend from another class waved at her quietly, offering a small smile. The librarian nodded at her with approval when she returned a book. A teacher gave her a kind look when she answered a question correctly. These little moments reminded her that she wasn't completely alone, that there were people who noticed her worth even if the bullies didn't. She held onto those moments like tiny lanterns guiding her through the dark. The next class was math, a subject she liked because numbers never lied. She worked quietly, solving problems in her notebook, letting the logic of equations and formulas occupy her mind. She imagined herself as strong and capable, someone who could handle whatever came next. When a classmate asked her a question, she explained it patiently, feeling a small surge of confidence. This confidence was fragile like glass, but it was real. Lunch passed slowly. She ate quickly and retreated to a quiet corner of the school library. The library was her safe space, a place where she could breathe without worrying about the bullies. She ran her fingers over the spines of books, reading titles, letting the words take her somewhere else. Stories of brave people, of triumph against the odds, filled her mind. She imagined herself in those stories, standing tall and unafraid. It was a comforting thought, and for a moment she felt lighter. But the moment passed too quickly. She heard the familiar laughter, the mockery that made her stomach twist. The bullies were close, just outside the library door. She could hear their footsteps, the scraping of shoes against the floor, heavy weight of their presence. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself to stay calm. Panic would only make things worse. She reminded herself of her plan. Stay quiet, stay aware, and don't give them a reason to target her further. Classes continued, and she moved from room to room with a careful, practiced grace. Every step, every glance was measured. She noticed how the bullies whispered to each other, plotting, scheming. She couldn't avoid them completely, but she could prepare herself. Each time she passed them, she held her head high, imagining herself invisible and untouchable. It was a small act of defiance, but it made her feel powerful in a way the bullies could never take from her. After school, she walked home with the weight of the day pressing on her. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. She tried to enjoy the colors, the feeling of the breeze on her face, the quiet streets. But the memories of the day lingered, the taunts, the shoves, the cruel laughter echoing in her mind. She reminded herself that tomorrow was another day, another chance to be strong, to stand tall, to show the world who she really was. That night, she lay in bed and thought about the future. She imagined a version of herself who could face the bullies without fear, who could stand up and protect herself and others. She pictured herself using her hidden strength, the powers she hadn't yet revealed, the courage that had been inside her all along. She didn't know exactly when or how, but she knew that moment would come. For now, she rested, letting her mind prepare for the battles ahead, knowing that each day brought her closer to the moment she would finally show the world the true power she had been hiding all along. The next morning felt heavier than usual. She walked into school, her backpack tight against her shoulders, each step careful and measured. The hallways were crowded, filled with the usual noise. Lockers slamming, students talking loudly, the faint smell of cafeteria food lingering. She tried to focus on her breathing, keeping herself calm. She knew the bullies were already nearby, watching, waiting. Their presence was almost a physical weight pressing against her. She spotted them in the hallway, leaning casually against the lockers, pretending not to notice her. She felt her stomach twist, but she reminded herself to stay composed. Ignoring them was her usual strategy, the way she avoided confrontation. She thought of walking past them, head down, pretending she was invisible. But today, something in her felt tense, alert, like a warning. The first period passed slowly, every minute dragging like it had its own weight. She kept thinking about the hallways, the lockers, the stairs, the places where the bullies could strike. By the time the bell rang, she felt like she had been holding her breath for hours. Gathering her courage, she moved toward the staircase, hoping to get to her next class quickly and avoid the confrontation. But it happened. They were waiting, as she had feared, at the top of the staircase. Their laughter echoed off the walls, sharp and mocking. She froze for a split second, heart pounding. The group of them blocked her path, leaning casually but with the weight of menace in their presence. One of them stepped forward, smirking, eyes cold and calculating. Without a word, the shove came. She tumbled backward, tripping over the edge of a step. Her body hit the stairs hard, the impact knocking the air out of her lungs. Pain shot through her legs and back, but her mind stayed sharp, adrenaline rushing through her veins. She landed at the bottom, stunned for a moment, her back aching. The laughter of the bullies filled the stairwell, echoing off the walls. Students passing by looked on, some shocked, some uncertain, but no one intervened. She felt a mix of fear and anger, but underneath it all, a spark of determination ignited. She wasn't just going to let this happen. Not anymore. Slowly, she pushed herself up, ignoring the throbbing in her body. Her breathing was heavy, but she held her head high. The bullies were smirking, expecting her to crumble, to beg or cry. But instead, she stared at them, steady and unwavering. For a moment, the laughter faltered, replaced by surprise. They weren't used to resistance from her. They expected submission, not defiance. Her mind raced, thinking fast. She could feel a strength she had never fully acknowledged before, a power rising within her. It wasn't just physical, it was her courage, her awareness, her refusal to be humiliated. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. She knew she had to act, but carefully. Panic would only make things worse. The first one stepped closer, trying to intimidate her with a shove. She sidestepped quickly, surprising him. Her movement was smooth, calculated, and unexpected. Another step, and she grabbed hold of a railing to steady herself, ready to counter if necessary. The air in the stairwell was thick with tension. She could see the hesitation in their eyes, the momentary doubt. This gave her the chance she needed. With quiet determination, she moved forward, using her body carefully but firmly. She didn't aim to hurt, but she used her strength to make them lose balance, to show that she was not defenseless. One by one, the bullies faltered, stumbling slightly on the stairs. She maintained her control, her focus sharp, aware of every movement and every potential threat. The sudden reversal stunned them. The smug smiles disappeared, replaced by confusion and panic. The students watching began to murmur, astonished at the scene unfolding. Whispers spread through the hallway like wildfire. No one had expected this quiet girl, the one everyone underestimated, to fight back in such a composed and effective way. She didn't shout, she didn't scream. She simply moved with intention, revealing a power that had been hidden all along. The confrontation lasted only moments, but it felt much longer. By the end, the bullies were no longer in control. They stumbled backward, off balance, trying to regain their composure, but she held her ground. Her heart was still pounding, her body aching, but she stood tall, victorious in a quiet, controlled way. She wasn't just defending herself. She was reclaiming her dignity, her space, her right to walk through the school without fear. When the teacher arrived, drawn by the noise, the situation quickly shifted. The bullies tried to explain, their words tripping over themselves, but it was clear who had been in the right. The girl calmly told the story, her voice steady, her eyes unwavering. She didn't embellish or exaggerate. She simply stated what had happened. The teacher nodded, impressed by her composure, and took the bullies aside to address their behavior. As the hallways returned to normal, she felt a mix of relief and triumph. She knew this was only the beginning, that there would be other challenges, other attempts to intimidate her. But for the first time, she felt confident in her ability to face them. She had discovered a part of herself she hadn't fully recognized before, a hidden strength that could no longer be ignored. Walking to her next class, she held her head high, noticing the changed expressions around her. Some students looked at her with newfound respect, others with awe. Even the bullies avoided her gaze, unsure how to respond to the girl they had once thought they could control. It was a small victory, but an important one. She had faced fear head-on and had come out stronger on the other side. In the quiet moments between classes, she reflected on what had happened. Pain still lingered in her body, but it was outweighed by the sense of empowerment that filled her. She realized that strength wasn't just about physical ability. It was about courage, awareness, and the refusal to let anyone diminish her. She had proven to herself that she could stand up, that she could defend herself, and that her hidden powers were real. By the end of the day, the school seemed different to her. She moved through the halls with a quiet confidence, aware of her surroundings, aware of herself. She had faced her fears, and in doing so, had revealed a power she never knew she had. And deep down, she knew that this was only the beginning. The days ahead would still bring challenges, but now she faced them with the certainty that she was capable, strong, and unyielding. After the hallway confrontation, the girl found herself sitting quietly in the library, her back pressed against the wooden chair, trying to calm her racing heart. The adrenaline from earlier still pulsed through her veins, and she could feel every muscle in her body tense and alert. She ran her fingers over the edges of the books around her, as if grounding herself in the calmness of the space. It was quiet here, peaceful, and for the first time in months, she felt a sense of clarity. She reflected on what had just happened. The bullies had underestimated her, and in that moment, she realized how much power she had kept hidden. Not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. It wasn't something she had thought about before. She had always been careful, quiet, trying to survive without drawing attention. But now she understood that strength wasn't just about hiding or staying small. Strength was about knowing who she was and refusing to let anyone take that away. Her mind wandered to her earlier life, to moments when she had felt powerless. Times when she had wanted to speak up but stayed silent. Times when she had wanted to defend herself but held back, worried about the consequences. Each memory brought a small sting but also a lesson. She realized that each of those moments had built her resilience, piece by piece, until it had grown into something far stronger than she had ever noticed. As she sat there, a thought came to her, almost like a whisper in her mind. What if she didn't need to fear anyone again? What if she could step forward, not with anger or recklessness, but with confidence, calmness, and control? She could feel a stirring inside, a sense of potential, something waiting to be awakened. She had always been careful, but now she sensed that the careful part of her could be balanced with courage and decisiveness. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. She looked up and saw a teacher passing by, giving her a small, approving nod. That tiny gesture reminded her that not everyone in the school environment was against her. Some people saw her, recognized her value, even if she had doubted it herself. That recognition was like a spark, igniting her determination even further. She decided to take a walk around the school courtyard, letting the sunlight warm her face. The wind brushed past her, carrying the sounds of other students laughing and chatting. She moved slowly, observing everything. The leaves on the trees, the way the light reflected off the windows, the quiet corners where she had often retreated to think. Each detail seemed sharper today, more vivid, as if her senses were heightened. It was a strange but welcome feeling, as if her awareness had grown in response to the events of the day. During her walk, she thought about the bullies again. She realized they had relied on fear and intimidation, not on skill or courage. Their power was false, built on making others smaller, weaker, and quieter. And yet, she hadn't let it work this time. She had confronted it in her own way, carefully and strategically, without letting it overwhelm her. That realization gave her a sense of control she had never experienced before. Her mind started exploring possibilities, imagining how she could use this newfound strength in other situations. It wasn't about revenge or hurting anyone unnecessarily. It was about self-protection, about standing up for herself and others, about showing that intimidation and cruelty didn't have to dominate her life. She imagined herself navigating the school hallways with confidence, moving through spaces without fear, and helping others find their own strength along the way. As she walked back to her classroom, she noticed a group of younger students struggling to carry their books. Without thinking, she stepped forward to help, using her strength in a simple but meaningful way. The gratitude in their eyes reminded her that power was not just about defending herself. It was also about making a difference in small, everyday ways. She smiled quietly, feeling that her hidden abilities weren't just for dramatic moments. They were part of her character, her way of engaging with the world. When she returned to class, she sat down and tried to focus on the lesson, but her mind kept replaying the events of the day. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, a sense that something fundamental had shifted within her. She realized that this was more than just a single victory over the bullies. It was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She had unlocked a part of herself that had been dormant for too long, and now it was awake, alert, and ready. During lunch, she found herself sitting with a few classmates who had noticed her strength. They didn't speak much, but their respect was clear in their quiet gestures and smiles. It was a different kind of connection, one built on recognition rather than fear or gossip. She felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced before, not because she had changed who she was, but because she had finally embraced her own power. After school, she spent some time practicing small exercises in her room, not because anyone had told her to, but because she wanted to feel more confident in her body and her abilities. She realized that her strength was not just mental, it was physical too. Every movement, every stretch, every controlled action built her awareness and honed her skills. She felt stronger with each passing moment, not in a way that was showy or aggressive, but in a quiet, steady way that gave her a sense of readiness. That evening, she reflected on the entire experience. She wrote in her journal, putting words to her feelings, exploring the new dimensions of herself that had emerged. She recognized that the hidden powers she had discovered were not magical. They were real, practical, and deeply rooted in her character, her resilience, and her determination. She had always had them, but now she understood how to awaken and use them effectively. As she drifted to sleep that night, she imagined the days ahead. She knew there would still be challenges, moments that would test her courage and strength. But she also knew that she was no longer the same person who had walked into the hallways earlier that week. She had grown, learned, and discovered her inner power. That power was hers to use wisely, to defend herself and others, and to move through life with confidence and clarity. And with that thought, she closed her eyes, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The next morning, she walked into school with a quiet determination. The events of the past days had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She no longer felt like a target or a victim. There was a calm power in her steps, a confidence that radiated from her without needing to be loud or aggressive. She knew the bullies would be watching, waiting for a reaction, but she refused to give them the satisfaction. Today she was in control. The hallway was crowded, as usual, but she moved through it like water flowing around rocks. She kept her head high, eyes forward, every step deliberate. She noticed the bullies leaning against the lockers, smirking and whispering to each other. Their expressions faltered slightly when they saw her approach. She didn't rush, didn't panic, just continued walking steadily. That simple act, the way she carried herself, made them unsure. They had always relied on fear to dominate, but she had already proven she could remain calm under pressure. In her first class, she took her seat and focused on the lesson. Her mind was alert, aware of every movement outside the window and in the hallway. She could feel the bully's eyes on her from a distance, and instead of feeling fear, she felt a sense of readiness. She had spent time reflecting, practicing, and preparing herself. She understood her own capabilities better than ever, and that understanding gave her a sense of control. This wasn't about revenge. It was about standing tall and showing that intimidation would no longer work. When the bell rang for the next class, she walked toward the staircase again. This time, she didn't feel the same dread she had felt before. She knew that if the bullies tried anything, she was prepared. She moved with purpose, noticing every detail of the environment. The handrails, the steps, the space between students. Awareness was part of her power, and she used it to her advantage. She could anticipate movements, calculate risks, and respond without hesitation. As she reached the top of the stairs, she saw the bullies waiting. One of them stepped forward, trying to appear confident and in control. She didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze steadily, a quiet firmness in her eyes that said she was ready. There was a brief moment of tension, the air thick with anticipation. She could feel the small crowd of students who had gathered, watching silently. They were waiting to see what would happen, and for the first time, she felt the support of their attention, even if unspoken. The bully made the first move, stepping closer, attempting a shove. She sidestepped smoothly, using her body to maintain balance and control. The motion was simple but precise. She didn't overreact, didn't attack recklessly. She simply positioned herself so that he stumbled slightly, surprised by her agility and composure. The other bullies hesitated, unsure of how to respond. They had underestimated her before, and now they realized she was different. She took a step forward, not aggressively but firmly. Her presence alone was enough to shift the balance of power. She used her awareness to predict their movements, countering each attempt to intimidate her. One tried to grab her backpack, another tried to block her path, but she moved around them effortlessly. She was calm, precise, and deliberate. Every step was controlled, every motion purposeful. It was not about hurting them, but about asserting herself, showing that she could not be overpowered. The students watching began to whisper, astonished at her composure and skill. The bullies' confidence was crumbling, replaced by doubt and fear. They had always relied on fear to manipulate others, but now the dynamic had shifted. She was the one in control, and it was clear to everyone present. The silence that followed her actions spoke louder than any words could. One of the bullies tried to push again, thinking he could regain the upper hand. She anticipated the move, shifting her weight and using his momentum against him. He stumbled forward, almost losing his balance. The others rushed to intervene, but she remained calm, standing her ground, her body and mind in harmony. Her hidden powers, her awareness, her strength, and her confidence were on full display, and they were undeniable. The teacher arrived at the scene, drawn by the commotion. The bullies attempted to explain, their words frantic and unconvincing. She calmly recounted the events, her voice steady and clear. She didn't exaggerate or embellish. She simply told the truth. The teacher nodded, impressed by her poise, and addressed the bullies directly, making it clear that their behavior was unacceptable. The hallways seemed to shift as the authority of the situation changed. The bullies had lost not just control but credibility. After the confrontation, she moved through the rest of her classes with a new sense of ease. She noticed the subtle changes in the way students looked at her. Some watched with quiet admiration, others with curiosity. Even those who had ignored her before now seemed to recognize her strength. It was a new kind of respect, one that wasn't born from fear or dominance, but from recognition of her courage and composure. During lunch, she sat with a few classmates who had shown kindness before. They didn't speak much about the incident, but their smiles and gestures were enough. She realized that her actions had not only protected her own dignity but also inspired others. She felt a sense of connection, a reminder that her strength could influence the environment around her in positive ways. It was empowering, and it filled her with a quiet confidence that stayed with her long after the bell rang. After school, she walked home slowly, reflecting on the day. The events had been intense, but she felt proud of how she had handled herself. She had faced fear head-on, controlled her actions, and revealed her hidden powers. She knew that this was only the beginning, that challenges would continue to come, but now she felt ready. She had discovered a part of herself that was strong, aware, and unyielding. At home, she spent time thinking about her future interactions with the bullies. She didn't plan revenge. She planned strategy, mindfulness, and continued growth. She realized that true power came from understanding oneself, maintaining composure, and acting with purpose. She practiced small exercises, strengthening her body and her awareness, preparing herself for any future challenges. It was not about aggression. It was about readiness, resilience, and confidence. That night, she reflected on everything she had learned. She wrote in her journal about the day, exploring the feelings of fear, anger, and triumph. She acknowledged her growth, her courage, and the emergence of her hidden powers. She understood that she was no longer a passive observer in her own life. She was active, present, and capable of shaping her own path. Her powers were not magical. They were real, grounded in awareness, strength, and confidence. And now she had fully awakened them. As she lay in bed, she felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The bullies no longer held power over her. Her actions had demonstrated that fear and intimidation could be met with calmness and strategy. She had discovered her hidden abilities, and she was determined to continue growing, learning, and moving forward with confidence. With that thought, she closed her eyes, ready to face whatever challenges awaited her next day, knowing that she was strong, capable, and unshakable. The next few days at school felt different. The hallways, once tense with anticipation, now carried a sense of quiet respect toward her. She walked with her head held high, aware of the shift in energy around her. Students who had once ignored her now gave her polite nods or smiles. Some whispered to each other, clearly impressed by the calm and composed way she had handled the bullies. She felt a mixture of pride and humility, understanding that her actions had not only protected herself but also inspired others. The bullies, on the other hand, were no longer the dominant presence they once had been. Their attempts to intimidate students were met with skepticism, hesitation, and in some cases, outright avoidance. Teachers and staff had taken notice of their behavior and made it clear that further misbehavior would not be tolerated. They had lost credibility and authority, and their presence was diminished. The girl observed all of this quietly, aware that the balance of power had shifted, but she did not boast or make herself the center of attention. She understood that true strength was silent and steady. In her classes, she noticed subtle changes in the dynamics. Group work, discussions, and even casual conversations flowed differently. Students were more open to listening, and her opinions were now respected rather than dismissed. She participated more confidently, sharing her thoughts and ideas without fear of ridicule. This was a new experience, one that felt both empowering and grounding. She realized that the courage she had displayed extended beyond physical confrontations. It had also influenced the way people perceived her intelligence, resilience, and character. During lunch, a few classmates approached her with questions about what had happened. They weren't prying or being nosy. They genuinely wanted to understand how she had stayed so calm and composed. She answered honestly, explaining that it wasn't about fighting or showing off, but about recognizing her own strength and staying aware. She spoke about preparation, focus, and self-respect. Her words were received with admiration, and some students even mentioned that they felt inspired to handle difficult situations in their own lives differently. The bullies themselves were forced to face consequences. Teachers held meetings with them, emphasizing accountability and respect. The school administration took actions that were fair but firm, ensuring that the message was clear. Bullying and intimidation would not be tolerated. The girl observed this from a distance, feeling a sense of relief that justice was being served without her needing to seek revenge. She understood that fairness and strength were intertwined, and that true power did not come from hurting others, but from standing up for oneself in a controlled and principled way. As the days passed, she also noticed changes in herself. She felt more confident walking through the school, more aware of her surroundings, and more capable of handling challenges that arose. Her inner strength had grown, and she now understood that it was not something external that gave her power. It came from within. She practiced mindfulness, staying aware of her emotions and responses, and continued to explore ways to improve her focus, resilience, and physical readiness. Each day brought small victories, reinforcing her belief in her own capabilities. At home, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. She wrote in her journal, noting the shifts in her confidence, awareness, and perception of herself and others. She understood that her experiences had shaped her, not by breaking her down, but by revealing the depth of her strength. She wrote about the importance of courage, preparation, and calmness, knowing that these qualities would continue to serve her in the future. She also recognized the role of empathy, seeing that strength could be used to support others, not just oneself. One afternoon, she noticed a younger student struggling with a group of peers who were teasing him. She approached calmly, offering words of support and guidance. She didn't need to intervene aggressively. Her presence alone was enough to change the situation. The student looked up at her with gratitude, and she felt a warm sense of satisfaction. She realized that her strength was not only about protecting herself but also about making a positive impact on the lives of others. Each act of kindness, each moment of support, became a way to reinforce the principles she had discovered within herself. The bullies continued to be present in school, but they had learned to tread carefully. They no longer attempted to dominate or intimidate her, and they were cautious around other students as well. She observed them with a sense of awareness, but without malice. She understood that their behavior was rooted in fear and insecurity, and that her own strength had simply illuminated the limits of their control. She felt a quiet compassion, recognizing that true power was about rising above, not tearing down. In her final classes of the day, she felt a sense of flow and ease. Her mind was focused, her actions deliberate, and her awareness sharp. She participated actively, collaborated effectively, and carried herself with confidence. The respect she had earned was not forced or superficial. It was genuine, built on consistent actions, composure, and the quiet demonstration of her inner strength. She understood that leadership and influence came naturally when one acted with integrity and courage. As the school day ended, she walked home with a steady, purposeful stride. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the streets, and she felt a sense of calm triumph. She had faced challenges, discovered her hidden powers, and demonstrated her strength in a way that was fair, controlled, and effective. The experiences had transformed her, not by changing who she was, but by revealing who she truly was. She felt empowered, capable, and ready for whatever challenges might come in the future. That evening, she sat quietly in her room, reflecting on the journey so far. She understood that the process of growth and self-discovery was ongoing, that challenges would continue to arise, and that her hidden powers would continue to develop. She made a plan to focus on her strengths, practice mindfulness, and help others when possible. She knew that the choices she made each day would shape the kind of person she would become. The sense of empowerment she felt was not fleeting. It was grounded in self-awareness, resilience, and the careful cultivation of her abilities. She wrote in her journal about the lessons she had learned from the bullies, the school environment, and herself. She acknowledged that fear and intimidation were part of life, but that courage, preparation, and calm composure could overcome them. She reflected on the importance of empathy, respect, and integrity, understanding that true power was not about dominance, but about principled action and influence. She felt proud of the strength she had discovered, and of the way she had handled the challenges that had come her way. As night fell, she lay in bed feeling a sense of peace and readiness. The bullies no longer held power over her, and the school environment had shifted in response to her actions. She had discovered her hidden powers, developed confidence and awareness, and learned the importance of principled action. She knew that the days ahead would bring new challenges, but she also knew that she was equipped to face them with courage, calmness, and integrity. With that understanding, she closed her eyes, ready to continue her journey, stronger and more confident than ever before. The following week, she walked into school feeling a quiet sense of strength and clarity. The experiences of the past days had left a mark on her, not of fear or anger, but of resilience and understanding. She knew that the challenges she had faced had revealed parts of herself she had never fully known before. Each step through the hallways was confident, deliberate, and calm. Students and teachers alike noticed the difference in her demeanor, sensing a new energy, a quiet authority in the way she carried herself. The bullies had learned their place. They no longer tried to intimidate her, and their influence over other students had weakened. It was as though the balance of power had shifted naturally, without force or spectacle. She observed them occasionally, noticing how they moved cautiously around her, their previous arrogance replaced with a cautious respect. It was satisfying, not because she had sought revenge, but because she had stood her ground and proven that strength and composure could overcome fear and intimidation. Her confidence extended beyond the hallways. In classrooms, she spoke up more often, sharing ideas and insights with clarity and thoughtfulness. Teachers recognized her engagement and praised her contributions, reinforcing the sense that she had earned respect through her actions and her attitude. She felt empowered, not in a boastful way, but in a way that encouraged self-awareness and personal growth. Her inner strength had become visible to those around her, and it inspired quiet admiration and trust. During breaks, she found herself helping classmates who were struggling with small conflicts or challenges. She offered advice, guidance, or just a listening ear. Her presence had become a source of reassurance for others, and she embraced it naturally. She realized that her hidden powers were not just about defending herself, they were about supporting and uplifting others. She had learned that strength carried responsibility, and she chose to use her abilities to create positive change in her environment. She continued to reflect on the past incidents, understanding them in a broader context. The confrontations with the bullies had been defining moments, but they were only a part of her journey. She recognized that life would continue to present challenges, but she now possessed tools to navigate them: awareness, courage, patience, and resilience. She had learned to trust herself, to remain calm under pressure, and to act decisively when necessary. These lessons had become ingrained, shaping her into a more grounded and capable individual. Her evenings were spent quietly, practicing self-improvement in small, consistent ways. She read books that expanded her understanding of the world, practiced physical exercises to strengthen her body, and reflected in her journal on her personal growth. Each day was an opportunity to build on the foundations she had established, reinforcing the sense of control and balance she had discovered. She recognized that hidden power was not a single moment of triumph but a continual process of self-awareness and development. One afternoon, she noticed a younger student being teased by a group of peers. She approached calmly, offering words of encouragement and support. Her presence alone seemed to change the dynamic, and the teasing stopped. The student looked up at her with gratitude, and she felt a warm sense of fulfillment. She understood that her influence could extend beyond herself, that her actions could create ripple effects in her community. It was a powerful reminder that strength was not just about personal protection but about contributing positively to the lives of others. Throughout the week, she continued to navigate school life with a sense of purpose and composure. She walked confidently through the hallways, engaged actively in her classes, and offered support where she could. The bullies remained distant, their attempts at intimidation diminished, and the school environment felt safer and more balanced. She had demonstrated that courage, self-awareness, and composure could transform not only her own experience but also the atmosphere around her. She also spent time reflecting on her emotions and reactions. She understood that fear and anger were natural, but they did not need to dictate her actions. By maintaining calm, assessing situations, and acting thoughtfully, she had discovered a level of power that was both practical and enduring. Her hidden abilities were no longer hidden, they were an integral part of her identity, shaping how she interacted with the world and how others perceived her. The experiences of facing and overcoming the bullies had taught her valuable lessons about resilience, empathy, and self-respect. She realized that true strength was not about confrontation for its own sake but about maintaining integrity, protecting oneself and others, and acting with purpose. She had learned to recognize her worth, trust her instincts, and navigate challenges with confidence. These lessons would stay with her, guiding her through future obstacles and opportunities. At home, she shared her thoughts and reflections in her journal, exploring the journey she had undertaken and the growth she had experienced. She wrote about courage, patience, and the importance of staying true to oneself. She reflected on how small actions, consistent awareness, and principled behavior had led to meaningful change. Through writing, she solidified her understanding of her own powers, acknowledging the depth and complexity of her personal development. As the week drew to a close, she felt a sense of accomplishment and inner peace. The challenges she had faced had revealed her hidden powers, transformed her perspective, and strengthened her character. She had learned to balance strength with empathy, courage with composure, and awareness with action. Her journey was ongoing, but she now approached it with confidence, clarity, and purpose. On Friday afternoon, she walked home, feeling the cool breeze on her face and noticing the beauty of the world around her. The events of the week had left her tired but fulfilled. She understood that growth was not always easy, that challenges would continue to arise, but she felt equipped to face them with resilience and determination. The hidden powers she had discovered were part of her now, a source of confidence and guidance that would stay with her throughout her life. That night, as she prepared for bed, she reflected on the journey from fear to empowerment. She realized that the most significant transformations often occurred quietly, within oneself, and were revealed through consistent, deliberate actions. She had faced fear, stood her ground, and discovered strengths she had not known she possessed. Her hidden powers were no longer hidden. They were an integral part of her identity, shaping how she approached life and how she interacted with the world. She lay in bed, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and readiness. The challenges with the bullies had been difficult, but they had revealed her courage, awareness, and inner strength. She had learned to act with calmness and purpose, to influence situations positively, and to maintain her integrity under pressure. She understood that life would continue to bring challenges, but she now possessed the tools and mindset to navigate them effectively. As she closed her eyes, she felt a sense of empowerment that was steady and enduring. She knew that her hidden powers, her courage, awareness, resilience, and empathy would guide her through the future. She had discovered her strength, faced her fears, and emerged with confidence and clarity. And with that understanding, she drifted into sleep, ready to embrace the days ahead with determination, wisdom, and an unwavering belief in herself.